So, in this segment, this is the one where we're going to talk a bit more in detail about the multiple sort of industry crisis in Britain, sort of the skill shortage rather than the energy crisis. So, Boris Johnson faced demands to urgently tackle the staff shortages emergency gripping Britain. So, we're going to talk about in a separate video that the government are pretty torn on whether to give out visas to sort of foreign citizens, essentially, to do temporary jobs in certain key industries. The government are very much torn on it. The dithering Prime Minister called the army to help with fuel deliveries, but almost every sector has been hit by a lack of workers. That's crazy. Almost every sector being hit. Like, it's madness. Starmer said Boris Johnson was warned about the crisis and did nothing about it. The Prime Minister needs to get a grip. I mean, that's great. That's great advice from Starmer. Get a grip. It's like Starmer is like one of those guys in MMA matches where he's like, someone gets taken down, it's like, just get up, fam. Just get up off the bottom. What are you doing? Or is like one of those guys in boxing, but like, what you gotta do is hit and don't get hit. Is like, how am I gonna do that? And it's like, what you do is just punch the other guy and don't get punched. I mean, this is why I'm frustrated with Labour, but this story is not about Labour. More than 1 in 4 petrol stations are still empty, bosses have said. You've even got the army chipping in here to help out, and you still got a shortage. It's a joke. Almost every sector of the economy has been hit by staff shortages amid fears of Christmas crisis as the prices of goods soar. I think we're at 4% inflation right now. It's possibly going to be higher. It's absolute madness. Everywhere from warehouses to factories, buses to pubs to pharmacies to schools have been battered by a shortage of workers. And these are skilled workers. Before anyone says, oh, these are low skilled workers, we train British people here. With the factories and the warehouses, you might get away with those. I'm assuming training is fairly minimal. But when it comes to being a bus driver, that's a very much skilled profession. You have to be able to drive like a big vehicle with a lot of people on, and if you crash that thing, you are going to probably kill someone. Pubs, obviously you've got the standard kind of waiter, waitress roles and barman jobs, etc. But you also have very skilled managers and cooks, essentially working in pubs. Can get very busy and rowdy on a Friday night. You need very good customer service skills to work in a pub. Pharmacies, that's a skilled job. You need certain qualification, typically to be a pharmacist. Schools, so teaching, you need a qualification for that. Starmer has demanded emergency action as he accused the Prime Minister of dithering as the crisis deepened. That's fine, again, but what are you going to do about that? Would you add more jobs onto the emergency visa list or the skill shortage list, whatever it's called? We've talked about it before. Would you do it? What's your plan here, big man? The Labour leader said the Prime Minister promised to save Christmas last year, and we know what happened. That went disastrously wrong. Very true. Now he's making empty promises again, and you've got to tag him now in PMQs about it. So when it hits January, you got the receipts. Boris has warned about the crisis he did nothing about, which is true. Boris Johnson warned that we might have crises for months. Sorry about the washing machine, can't do much about it. Ruth Gregory of Consultants Capital Economics added clouds are darkening. Storms are coming, and it's coming for you, in the words of Jaden Yugi. Even Number 10's promises of reserve fuel tankers to fill dried petrol pumps went in tatters yesterday after more than 40 of the 80 vehicles lay unused at the depot because they can't use them. They're not fit for purpose. The lorries were pictured at Fenston, Cams, and the rest of the fleet is in Bradistan. Policing Minister Kit Malthouse warned motorists would have to endure another week or so of fuel shortages, which isn't true because we're going to face potentially more than a month of this until people stop being ridiculous and buying loads of amounts, and we actually get the drivers in to start delivering petrol to places. Britain's always, I think they run on a cycle where they only expect people to run with a half tank and only fill up half a tank of petrol, which obviously isn't happening right now and is one of the things causing the crisis. But we already know BP was struggling before this kind of crisis went public to fill up certain petrol stations. I think it was like 20 out of like 100 were closed or something like that. The Petrol Retailers Association revealed more than 1 in 4 petrol stations are empty, yet ministers are said to have admitted that the effing crisis in energy, fuel shortages and empty food shelves will last for months. So they're telling you it's going to last for weeks, but behind the scenes they're also saying it's going to last for months, which will happen. At least for the energy and fuel crisis. The empty shelves will last for a lot longer. Campaign food group Fair Fuel UK claimed pump prices will definitely rise by 5p per litre in the coming week, and that's going to impact a lot of people, especially given our infrastructure sucks. Public transport is rubbish in this country, and that will probably go up in price as well, thanks to the Wonder Cloud. And along with the rising energy prices, a cost of living crisis, wages aren't going up unless you're in certain sectors. Fears of goods costing more and a diminishing choice of items in stores is leaving families a nightmare Christmas a year after the festivities were cancelled due to Johnson's blatant lockdown. So that's 2 Christmases in a row he's going to ruin. And I don't know how much Christmas means to English people. Like, again, I don't celebrate it, or should I say British people. But, if it's a case where you're going to have 2 in a row ruined by this man, you've got to really think about, should this man be Prime Minister? Honestly. The company Chemists Association, we're learning all about so many associations and trade groups, said deliveries to pharmacies were also being held up, and that's a huge problem for people. Because they might be given different kinds of medicines to deal with whatever their illnesses are, which in some cases can have side effects for people. In Lancashire, 500 schools will offer a reduced menu. We've spoken about that. Council said it will focus on jacket potato soups, sandwiches, and fresh fruit, which is becoming more difficult to get because of the lorry driver shortage and the farming shortage. There are warnings that widespread shortages across swathes of the economy could dent the recovery from COVID, which is very true, that our economic recovery is being dented by the lack of staff and also stuff to sell. If you don't have stuff to sell, you're not going to make any money. If you don't have any staff, you've got no one who can sell the stuff. That's the problem we're facing right here. You don't have people to move the stuff, you don't have people to pick the stuff. That's the crisis Britain is facing right now. Ministers have urged thousands of firefighters to give up their life-saving jobs to become HGV drivers, something we've spoken about before. So that's one problem right there, the HGV crisis. Petrol, motorists face another week of fuel shortages, as the minister signalled yesterday. Malthouse saying it's going to last a week. We're saying it's going to last maybe a month, potentially. The distribution mechanism is trying to respond to unprecedented demand, which it wasn't unprecedented in the beginning. It's just a crisis that erupted and is made worse because people don't have common sense in this country. And the problem is, once a few people start panic buying, everyone has to, because you're going to be without it. Ministers have yet to ask soldiers to drive tankers to restock forecourts, but we keep saying that the government have asked soldiers to start refueling petrol stations. Now we're saying that they haven't. Which one is it? I'm very confused now. But Malthouse said if things deteriorate further, then the Prime Minister, who's on holiday, and Kwasi Kwarteng will have to review the situation. Boris Johnson's on holiday until Thursday, the 14th. So depending on when this video goes out, he might still be on holiday. So this situation won't be reviewed till Friday at the earliest. Union also warned that 3/4 of staff in filling stations have been abused in the crisis. That's Boris Johnson's Britain. General Secretary Paddy said this is a crisis that was made by Downing Street but has impacted motorists and petrol station staff. Our members are telling us that the vast majority of customers have been great, but a significant minority take out their frustration on staff, which they really shouldn't be doing. They should be they should be talking to their local elected official who have helped to create this problem via Brexit and their other stupidity that they've done. They've allowed, being a HGV driver to be an industry that has no respect, is treated badly. The wages are poor, the standards, in terms of their working conditions are poor. These are things the government could have reformed but chose not to. European truck drivers are already treated better than British ones. Warehouses are already 10,000 workers short. That was before a surge in demand for Christmas. So this is another problem where your kids won't be able to get the toys they want, or you're going to have to pay a lot more for them, especially because of scalpers. I tell you what, if I don't get my Pokemon Diamond on time, I'm going to be very upset. Retailers and operators need an army of temporary staff, with online giant Amazon kicking off a bid of hiring 20,000 more people. And the thing is, Amazon can afford to pay staff more because they're a huge company, so that's going to essentially price out other players in the industry. Sainsbury's is marking 3,000 more delivery drivers, as well as 4,500 more in warehouse and logistics, especially with the rise of online shopping that's really been sped up due to COVID. However, firms face a battle given how many temp roles were filled by EU nationals which aren't coming back. People aren't coming back here to work in these places seasonally. So you face a major problem, especially with the UK unemployment rate being very low. You're going to have to offer people good money to take up these jobs. Claire Bottle, Chief Executive of the UK Warehousing Association, warned the problem is big. She said one solution is to raise pay. Several members have overnight increased pay by 20 to 30%, and many operate on slim margins, which means the cost for the consumer goes up. If the cost of labour goes up, they have to pass it on to the consumer. In a sign of the challenge, Amazon is offering signing up bonuses of £1,500 in some areas, which will inevitably be passed on to the consumer. Pubs and restaurants, so failure to recruit enough hospitality staff. In Europe they treat hospitality as a craft where you train people up properly, you get the skills they need, so they become great front of house staff or great chefs and whatever. In Europe we don't, in the UK even, we don't do that as much. We treat hospitality like a joke. UK Hospitality said the sector is already 10% short of workers, with just over 200,000 vacancies, forcing venues to close or restrict opening hours over the summer. Some places aren't doing lunch or have massively reduced menus because of this. You treat people badly, and if it's not worth their time to come here, they're not going to do it. Chief Kate Nichols added, "We are really fearful the same thing will happen at Christmas, where I think more people are like to go out during Christmas because that's when more family get-togethers happen. So it's going to be worse, especially as more people are going to sit indoors. It's going to be far more crowded. The sector makes 40% of its annual profit in the last 3 months of the year, so inevitably it's going to be very busy. If you don't have the staff to capitalise on that, that's a huge problem, especially since a lot of these places have COVID loans they have to pay off from the government." Miss Nichols said, "We fear some businesses may yet fail and the recovery will be sluggish." Again, another huge problem. The body wants temporary visas for overseas HGV and poultry workers to be extended to its sector, where you've got companies essentially fighting each other, really, saying that why do they get temporary visas and we don't? Which, it doesn't make sense on the whole. Rubbish collectors are another everyday impact of the worker shortage in some areas. Councils have had drivers poached by haulage firms with the promise of higher pay, including reports of $30,000 a year more. And obviously the councils can only pay a certain amount to refuse collectors, but companies can pay far more for them to become HGV drivers. Why? Because companies will pass that cost on to the consumer, and council tax rises have been capped. And when you raise council taxes, people get very upset at you. Very, very upset. That can cost you an election. That's one of the reasons why there have been many council tax freezes. It's one of the main selling points of the Conservatives. So we've talked multiple crises within the government, within the country really. Bins, we've talked about hospitality, HGV, Petrol, was there any more? Warehousing, etc. Multiple problems, and the big man's on holiday. So not great overall. And Boris Johnson doesn't have the intelligence or wherewithal to actually try and do anything to solve these issues, especially because in some ways there isn't a lot of things he can do, because the stage has already been set for EU workers to snub the UK because we treated them rubbish. We said we don't need them. We've created a system where they don't feel welcome here, and now we're like, oh yeah, bloody foreigners coming here taking our jobs, and now we're like, bloody foreigners not coming here taking our jobs. You can't have it both ways. You can't treat people badly and expect them to stay. People don't roll like that. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.